Alrighty. Welcome back, everyone, for something that I've decided to dub a chat between two nerds. Today, we are going to be... Actually, first, before I get into that, and do my whole neurodivergent, just jump straight into the topic. Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Thoroughly enjoyed our chat last time. Literally before I got on this call, I'm making a new character for Dragonlance, which I've never played in before. So ttrpg is consuming my life, and you know what? In my 40s, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Yeah, there are a lot worse problems to have. Dragonlance, that's
You know,
actually one of my favorite settings that I haven't played in.
it's one of those settings I've been super curious about. I play D&D with a couple guys, and one of them is a huge Dragonlance nerd, and I first got into learning about it through them. And I bought the big Margaret Weiss book during the summer. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. That's sort of on my winter reading list. I tried to watch these terrible animated movie from the mid-aughts. Yeah, holy shit. I made it about 20 minutes into it. I'm like, I can't do this.
The books are way better. Way better.
I would fucking hope so. But no Kiefer Sutherland, so
that is fair. That is fair. Yeah, I've read through the book series, like the I think it's the Legends Chronicles, I do believe, is what it's referred to as, like the series. But or no, Legends was everything before the Dragons of series. But like that was that. It's funny that you bring that up because that was actually going to be one of the things that I touched on today. But so what we're here to talk about tonight is well, world building. I know both you and I, Mike, are going to have slightly different experience and viewpoints on this, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to have this chat with you about that. Now with myself, how I look at world building, I take kind of a ground up, like from the ground up approach. As mentioned last time, I'm not a huge fan of playing in established worlds. Whereas from what you were saying, Mike, you're a little bit more comfortable with that now, more so than you used to be. But like that's more of your wheelhouse. It would be safe to say.
Yeah, like I prefer someone give me the toys and I'll work with the sandbox that I'm given, as opposed to I'm not the type of kid you would hand a box of Lego to and say, build something. I'd rather you hand me the box of Lego and give me the instructions. It's not that I'm not that creative, because like I do writing for a podcast called Weekly Spookies, and one of the rules is you can't use established IP. So I'm allowed to create stories out of whole cloth and stuff that's in public domain. But when it comes to creating my own stuff, it's not something I totally like, because when I do lore in my own head for certain things, I have a very specific guideline. And if I'm inviting players into that world, I hope you know what I know. Whereas if I put you in, hey, it's Star Wars. The Empire has been, the Death Star's been blown up, and you're on the run. So you know exactly where you are. You know the time period, and you're off to the races. Whereas I'm like, okay, you're going to fight the Zinthnar Empire and the rebels, and you're going to be like, what? And you don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. So it's just not my comfortable wheelhouse.
Yeah, and you know what? That's 100% fair. Like I've played with a lot of GMs who they'll dive into, the established building blocks of whatever world that they're working on. And like I myself have done it as well. I've run quite a few games of 3.5 in the Forgotten Realms. And like in the 90s and early 2000s, I was a fan of a certain dark elf that shall be named that shall remain nameless, although I don't think he needs to be. But like from my perspective, like one of the reasons why I like to take the ground up approach myself is it kind of goes back to when I was honestly, it goes back to before I was heavily into ttrpgs. For one of the things that I would do for fun is I would sit down with a bunch of graph paper and draw out maps. I can't tell you how many different like world maps or sections of world maps I've drawn up for campaigns that have never left the planning stages.
The drawing board?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it usually because I just don't have the people around to play because, adult life sucks sometimes.
Yes, it does.
So like that's one of the things that like I thoroughly enjoy the creating of the world that everybody's going to play in. And I know for some people that can seem overwhelming. You know what I mean? Because like if you're going to create a world, okay, so how big are the land masses going to be? Are you putting most of what's happening on one continent, or are you going to spread it out, amongst multiple continents? How many continents do you have? And that's even before looking at, okay, so what about the different kingdoms in your world and the different nations and things like that? So like, I can see how it can be overwhelming, especially if you're looking at it like all at once, which, where your general approach to world building of starting with those building blocks in place, I can 100% see why a lot of people would gravitate towards that.
Yeah, because like for me, if I know the setting, then I can start to flesh it out. Like for example, like I'm a professional game master at a local game store, and I set my stuff in the Forgotten Realms, but I've created a custom or a city on the Sword Coast named after the city that I live close to, just called Cambridge. And I've developed factions, I've developed a lore there, but I have it interacting with different pieces. Although, strangely enough, they've never been to places like Baldur's Gate or Waterdeep or Cormyr or Ten Towns or whatever. It's mostly been kept to Mintaran in the Sea of Swords, I want to say, and the town of Cambridge in general. Maybe some Ravenloft stuff I've done where it's like sort of cross-dimension sort of thing. But I always try to keep it in the same thing. Whereas if I run Shadowrun, for example, I use a setting that is not well fleshed out, but there's enough detail there. Like I've set stuff in Toronto, and I try to keep it within the UCAS, and I'll try and like flesh out a few things here and there. But then I'm sort of running almost a custom world, but certain world events will have happened. My big thing with world building is I want lore to be established, like especially for something like Shadowrun. Like most of my knowledge stops at 2060. Beyond that, I'm like, I don't fucking know. But if you ask me anything from 2013 all the way up to 2058, I know it pretty well. So it's easy for me to say, oh yeah, this happened during Bug City, this happened during the Chicago Containment Zone incident, this was after the assassination of Dunklazan. It's easy for me to make it work. When I try to do something whole cloth, like the times I've run stuff in Toronto for UCAS, AS, like, because I used to run a podcast called Terrible Warriors with a few friends of mine. Our back catalog is still online. It was harder than what I thought, just trying to create certain things out of whole cloth and this, that, and the other thing. But I knew the lore well enough where if people were willing to invest in it, I could say, oh yeah, that was Knight Errant. There's a connection to Az Technologies or Shia Wise or whatever. Basically, my approach to world building, or part of the reason why I love certain aspects of playing in an established world, is if you're curious, I'm going to reward you. Like, for example, when you and I played Battletech a couple months ago, you knew the lore way better than me, but I was able to have some fun with it because you would let me be a Clan Watch operative, which basically means I was doing spy shit. And that was really cool because you let me play in that backyard. So it was a way for me to discover the lore as I'm going. And I think you appreciated that you've got plot threads to pick up on. Because with world building, you want to have your players interested enough that they can go off the beaten path if they want. But you as a game master don't feel constrained like, oh, fuck, suddenly he knows, I don't know, one of the Ilkhans from Clan Snow Raven or some bullshit. There's something there, right? So
yeah,
I'm not quite sure where I'm going with this tangent, but
it's fine. And like that,
I lost the plot.
And like that's one of the reasons why I'm willing to work within like an established world, like with BattleTech. Like, and by the time you had joined, like the campaign had already deviated from canon enough that like anything that really happened,
custom?
Anything that really happened at that point is like cool. It's dressing, because like by that point, the players had already retaken Roadside, which doesn't happen in like for I think it's another like 50, 60 years before Roadside is taken away from the Jade Falcon. But like it was one of the things that I crafted together, and that was really fun doing that building that world building within the established lore. One of the things like with doing it that way and with starting with established lore that for myself that kind of turns me off of doing it that way is established characters.
Yeah, like there was a video I watched a number of years ago, and I've never forgotten the advice. If you put Darth Vader in your game, they'll try to kill him. And that's true. Putting established characters in your game is never a good idea. Cameos is fine, but never have them be the central driving plot. And I found this out during fucking high school. Very quick story. I can't remember the precise setup, but I know exactly how it fucking ended. My players, we were playing Star Wars 2nd Edition by West End Games. Awesome game. You should buy it, or just download it because it's out of print. Anyway, they were on either Endor or another planet, and they were at some spaceport, and they were fighting Boba Fett. Somehow they killed Boba Fett, and I'm thinking, well, there goes my big bad. And somehow they got fucking Darth Vader roped into this. It was something so cartoonishly stupid you couldn't help but laugh. But they loved every minute of it. But you're right. And when you start putting established characters in it and they become a main driving part of the plot, it doesn't work. Like certain game systems, I think are really bad for it, or have the potential to be bad for it. One game I'm a huge fan of because the setting doesn't happen during the big part of the thrust of the story is Free League Publishing's One Ring, which is Lord of the Rings role playing, or Middle Earth role playing, which is again same thing, different system, whatever. But they set it during the Second Age as opposed to the War of the Ring, right? Because you know how it ends, fucking Frodo walks, throws it in the ring, whatever. But if you set it before that, then you've got some flexibility. In that one, you don't have to worry about running into Frodo or Bilbo or Sauron or whatever. You can literally have, oh yeah, there's the Misty Mountain, there's the mountain halls of the Dwarf Kings. You've got the setting is open but still established. But the second you run into something that they're going to run into Smog, they're going to run into Sauron or fucking Ring Race or whatever, you've got a problem. And yeah, I'm kind of the same mindset. Like, having established characters can be really bad. Like, I know, for example, Shadowrun, I've had adventures when I was younger. I had another game master, used to be a friend of mine. We're not friends any longer, but he had Lothwire, and Lothwire is the big dragon that runs Satyr Krupp. And I had a crossing with him, but he was never a campaign focus. It was like, hey, I'm going to pay you to do XYZ. Do you agree to this arrangement? Yeah, sure, whatever. But it was never a campaign level threat enemy. I even think I ran into Harlequin once, but those were cameos, like sort of like special guest starring Whoopi Goldberg, right, from like fucking Star Trek. But they were never the focus of the full episode. But the second you bring in a characters with an established canon that has an established ending, that's where you stretch believability.
Yeah.
And that's where things can get really messy with your players. They're either going to totally buy in or they're totally not. I mean, even to go to Dragonlance, if you're running into Rasslin, or if you're in the Forgotten Realms, you run into Elminster, they should be cameos at best. Anything beyond that, it's shaky territory.
Oh yeah, like with my thing, it's more the playing of the established characters, because I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to put the wrong energy into a character that's already established within the greater lore. So like it's that's where I find I have a hard time with that. And I know part of that is just I think the solution to that is just kind of don't try so hard and just like roll with it. If it's the same as the ideal or the canon ideal of the character, cool. If it's not, well, you've just, created an alternate universe and run with it.
Like, I know one of the things I do to get around the canon problem, and I love how you put that, you don't want to get the vibe down wrong. Like, for example, I'm running Star Trek adventures for a private group of mine on Thursday nights. And one of the things I'm like, they're not going to run it in the Captain Picard. They're not going to run into the Borg Queen. They're not going to run into any major established characters. But secondary is fine. So if they had a prominent role in an episode, you could do that. For example, they're getting ready to depart Starbase 364, which leads into the Shackleton Expanse. The Shackleton Expanse is a part of the game universe that CBS Paramount said, hey, you guys can play in this backyard, do whatever you want. This is the Modiphius playground, more or less. I'm like, okay, cool. I can work with that. So I did some reading on Memory Beta. I'm like, whatever happened to Commander Shelby, the woman who helped out Commander Riker deal with Captain Picard when he was assimilated by the Borg? And I'm thinking, because you never see her on screen until Picard season 3, right? Sorry, spoilers for 2-year-old TV show. Fuck off. And I'm thinking, I can work with this because we don't know what her history is post 2365, I want to say. So we don't know what happens with her until 2401. So you've got this blank period that if it's not on screen, it's not canon. And if it's not in a book that's officially sanctioned or whatever, it's not canon. You can do what you want. So I think picking side characters, and that works with characters from like any canon. Like, for example, I don't know. I'm trying to think who might be a fun. I'm trying to think of a fun side character. I guess to go back to the Shadowrun example, any of the prime runners that are mentioned in like those little sidebars, like people like Fast Jack, although I'm pretty sure they're dead, or Captain Chaos, stuff like that. You've got options to use people like that because that's not an established character. that has affected canon beyond XYZ. Maybe they did in some of the later novels, I'm not sure. But you have options. But if you try to play, again, your Luke Skywalkers, your Darth Vaders, your Gandalfs, you're not Ian McKellen. You're not James Earl Jones. Those are very specific performances that demand an approach to the lore and almost like a reverence. And maybe I'm putting too much into this, but I feel you, because you don't want to disturb what the ideal is that your players have. They know who these characters are. Like, I'm not Patrick Stewart. I'm not going to play Captain Picard. You might get a message from him in a letter. You can write someone, but you're not going to deliver a Shakespearean soliloquy in the same way he does. It doesn't seem to fit right.
But Mike, I want to hear your impression of Captain Picard.
You're adorable. I should do his dancing that he sings to Gene Roddenberry. You're adorable. No. But yeah, there's like so many things. Like, I completely agree with you. Like, having established characters cross over, and it's fun to do alternate universes. Like, I know there was a very famous comic in the either late 90s, early 2000s, where they did sort of an alternate take of Star Wars, and it's what if Luke didn't destroy the Death Star, and somehow shenanigans happen and Yoda drives it to Coruscant and blows up Coruscant or something ridiculous. It's fucking Looney Tunes. But it's weird. Or like, what if Luke had died on Hoth and Leia had to take up the mantle to become the next Jedi? Alternate universes can be really fun, but I find those campaigns, unless you're a really talented game master, I find can peter out really fucking quickly. And I guess that's kind of goes back to your world building and your campaign worlds. Those are the settings you want to play in, are your own. When you start doing alternate universe, again, it gets a little timey-wimey bullshit, which, again, weird side tangent, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this. Are there any games with established settings, which, you know, I'm a fan of, that you will not run, or ones that you are terrified to fuck up the tone? To give you an example of what I'm talking about, Doctor Who: Adventures in Time and Space by Cubicle 7. What a beautiful game. Ooh. What an amazing setting. I am terrified to run that, because do you let your players become the Doctor? Do you let them become just companions? What are you, as Damien, the random person from wherever, what are you going to do against a Cyberman or a Dalek? You're going to do fuck all except run.
Yeah.
Right? And I know role-playing games are supposed to be adventurous. You're supposed to have that power fantasy. But I find running a game like Doctor Who, it's so intimidating because it has such a vibe, it has such a feel to it. And I wouldn't want to ruin Doctor Who by messing it up, right?
Yeah.
I find that setting so intimidating to run.
I think that one would be a definite one where, yeah, time fuckery and basically alternate realities are established. So like you can get away with being a little fucky about it, but like that one, I would not run that myself. Like I agree with you. Like I don't think I have the chops to bring the expected experience.
Yeah, because it's such a vibe. Yeah, because like Doctor Who episodes, like I know in their game system, talkers go first. So if you can talk your way out of a situation, you're going to go first. If you're like a guy from UNIT and you shoot a gun, you're going to go last. The Daleks go last. It's such a very specific vibe. I tried writing a Christmas adventure for Doctor Who that I was going to set during Anne of Green Gables. If you're Canadian, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I had a Christmas invasion by Cybermen. And I was going to have Anne of Green Gables riding in the TARDIS with, I think at that time it would have been the 11th Doctor was on TV.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, this is a cool idea. And I couldn't get it past it. I'm like, I've got visuals. I got a wonderful. I have an image in my head of them speeding over a snow Prince Edward Island in the TARDIS with the door open, whipping around, and a Cyberman spaceship chasing them. And I could never get it beyond that because I'm thinking, I don't know what to do. I know combat. I know intense drama, but Doctor Who is such a vibe. I can't do it. Whereas you ask me to do something like, say, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness by Palladium, which is Ninja Turtles. Yeah, I could probably do that. Like, okay, you're gonna fight the Foot Clan. Karai shows up with a bunch of Utoms and Triceratons. Cool. Save New York. You're a random mutant of the week. You don't even need the turtles to show up. And that's a setting that lends itself to some interesting things. Because again, the IDW comics have expanded out on other mutants that have shown up. The books have interesting ideas to create your own mutants. And even stuff like the Robotech game, which came out in the 80s and 90s, that's a fairly open universe where you don't need to be Rick Hunter. You don't need to be on the SDF-1. There were heroes on other fronts. It doesn't need to be, you're all fighting for the love of Lin Min May or whatever. It's just, it's an easier setting, but certain settings lend easier to role-playing games, whereas other IPs don't. Like, hell, another good example of an IP that isn't so it's character focused but open enough where you're not committed to it is something like, say, Judge Dredd. Right? As long as you're in Mega City 1, you're a judge. Dredd exists. He's out there patrolling whatever block. Go fight the mutants. Go fight I don't know, the robots on the moon or something. It's a setting that just works because it's so big and so wide. It's character dependent, but character independent enough that you can do whatever you want. I'm trying to think of like other settings that are fairly loosey goosey like that. Like, okay, here's something you and I both know fairly well. World of Darkness, to talk about world building. That is something that in our experience as a collective group, as players, we were never constrained by lore. Certain things were hinted to have happened, but we were never like, oh yeah, the Prince of Chicago said this, and the Primogen from New York is coming to Toronto for XYZ. We were never constrained by that. All we knew is, here's the clans, here's the bad guys. Let's all sit around until we all go to donuts at 4:00 in the morning. Because let's be real, that's how that game fucking went.
Generally, yeah.
But we were but we were never so bogged down by lore we couldn't have a good time. That world gave you the tools, gave you the sandbox, gave you your plastic fangs, and said, go to town. Whereas, again, I'm going to go back to Star Wars. That's another game where if you played a different setting, like, again, you can just be the Death Star blew up. The Death Star hasn't blown up. Certain things happen. You never would have to cross paths with Luke Skywalker. And as far as I know, I mean, when I think of the lore of that universe, everybody knew who Luke was after the Death Star, but there were still wars being fought on other fronts. I mean, we just saw Andor on television a couple of months ago. We know there are other places in the galaxy where things are happening. Heroes and villains are made, right? It's not just Darth Vader and Palpatine walking around killing people. Yeah, but like other properties just don't. I mean, hell, even going back to BattleTech, that is another setting I would be terrified to run if you had players who knew the setting better than you. Like, and that's one thing that intimidated me when I was playing with you in your group, because you guys knew shit that I didn't. See, it's weird. I know the mechs, I don't know the history. Which I should probably be the other way around. I was actually having a conversation with a friend of mine this week. I was like, BattleTech is Game of Thrones for car guys, because it's basically it's Game of Thrones with a little less incest and autocannons.
Well, and I don't know. Honestly, with the lore knowledge that I have and the amount that I've read, I don't know if I would say with less incest.
Oh, those House Steiner people. But yeah, it's so wild. Like certain settings, I feel intimidated by the lore, but I love the setting, and that sucks.
Yeah, and like honestly, and kind of going back to your question about like settings that I think would be cool,
Don't
but
vibe
like
with.
I would
Yeah.
not run in. Um,
hmm
the anything in the DC universe.
Yeah, because you always will have that one guy. Every game has this guy. You can say you're not, but you are. There's always one guy who's the continuity lawyer, or there's somebody who knows the lore better than you do. Like Marvel just put out the Marvel multi-universal game, 616.
Yeah.
There's your problem right there. You just said it, 616. You know the setting. And I know we're supposed to be adventurers and there's always new heroes every other month or whatever. But you're right. When you play in a game like a comic game like DC, Marvel, Wildstorm put out one a couple years ago with the Valiant universe. No, that yeah, whatever. It's hard because yeah, like what are you as Bob the superhero gonna do against fucking Superman or the Green Lantern shows up or Doomsday or Lex Luthor? What are you gonna do?
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. And like you'd also previously brought up Palladium. That's one of the
Yeah.
things that I really like about their systems because because I think their mutants was mutants and masterminds. Was their like
No.
superhero? No, that was somebody else.
Yeah, that's Green, Ronin, did Mutants and
Yes.
Masterminds, but yes.
But like Palladium had their own superhero game and stuff like that. And they also had the Ninja Turtles game, as you'd mentioned before. And
Yep.
a lot of those are, as you'd mentioned, and actually a lot of Palladium stuff is loose enough that, like you'd mentioned, Ninja Turtles. Yeah, you're playing in New York. You may run across the Ninja Turtles, but you don't need to be one of the Ninja Turtles. Things are
Yeah, like
going on.
there's enough there.
Yeah, things are going on where you know what you don't need to. You're probably not going to run into Casey Jones, or somebody like that. Although if I could find a GM who could properly do the Casey Jones voice, I would be
Yeah.
I would be 100% down for that.
Whenever you mention Casey Jones, have you ever seen the meme where it's him showing up for a job interview? He still has all of his shit on, except he's wearing a business suit. Do you know exactly what I'm talking about? That's what I picture anybody running Casey Jones. It says he shows up in a business suit for no reason. But yeah, like the thing I love about fucking Palladium, here's some stuff. You don't have to use it, but you can. Like, I have a huge Rifts collection. I've read like none of it. But the fact that like, here's the world book for Africa, here's the world book for Atlantis, here's the Outer Plains, here's a book on juicers or whatever. Here's some cool shit. Here's some history. You can use it if you want, but I never feel like the narrative is so cohesive that it's going to fall apart if you don't follow it to the letter.
And exactly. And not only with that,
that's kind of the beauty.
100%. And also like with Rifts, that's one of those systems that system was designed because Palladium went, you know what? We have all of these different games. What if we just mashed them all together?
Mm-hmm.
Like there are conversion rules to bring in TMNT characters. They have like a setting set in the Vietnam War, and I'm pretty sure there's conversion rules to bring characters from that setting into Rifts. You can bring Palladium fantasy characters into Rifts, and if you do that, they are so broken, especially if you bring magic user, like any sort of magic user, any sort of mage, because all of their spells that do damage become mega damage.
Yeah, I mean, it just works. I'm actually looking through my digital RPG library right now, and I'm just looking at other settings that are generic but work enough within the setting of you can do whatever you want. And this just occurred to me. This works really well depending on your game master and your group. Transformers. And what I mean by that is all you need to know, Megatron, Optimus, and you can set it during literally anything, unless you're committed to a setting like, say, Beast Wars or something. And even then, through some of the writing in some of these books, they have Cheetor interacting with someone like, say, Blaster or whatever. They should be separated by millions of years, but for whatever reason, there they are.
Yeah.
And you can do stuff like that. Like Transformers, all you need to know is evil Decepticons fighting Autobots. And if you want to bring in lore from the IDW comics, you can. If you want to follow even Bayverse stuff, you technically could, because the Transformers lore, because it's so episodic, it's not so beholden to a finished story, because each iteration of Transformers finishes a different way, for like everything from Armada, Energon, and Cybertron, as compared to Robots in Disguise or Transformers Animated or Transformers Prime. Another good example of a world that is established more so in how it looks and feels as opposed to canonical events, though you can play within those canonical events and you don't affect the main character story.
And
you and I both played in this universe, Alien.
Yes.
Think about it. Now with Alien Earth on TV, they're now changing the timeline of things. And I'm not going to give spoilers for the TV show other than I think it's amazing. You can do whatever you want, because all you need to know is something was found. There's a pathogen that can lead to xenomorphs, and Weyland-Yutani sucks, and there's different factions. And that's all you really need to know. And the world is so open that you don't need to be worried about what happened on LV-426, because odds are this has probably happened elsewhere within the universe of Alien, and maybe you were a team that got wiped out. Maybe Weyland-Yutani suppressed the information so much so that, you know, you won't say anything. And plus, one of the things I've noticed with travel in that series is time is very fluid. It takes you decades to get across anywhere, or it takes you a really long time. That's why they sleep in freezers. So by the time you discover the aliens on LV-927 or whatever, that may not even matter by the time you get back to Earth or Gateway Station.
Oh, exactly.
So that setting is very open as well. And that's another cool setting. Like, here's your monsters, here's your tech. You know these events happen with the Nostromo, Fury 161, LV-426. You never need to cross paths with Ripley at all, and it doesn't affect the storyline.
And one of the things with Alien, unreliable narrator is a tool that you can use so liberally. Yeah, your players may know about the Nostromo. And yeah, you can let them bring that information in, but there's there's nothing saying that that information that they have is the correct information.
Yeah, like there's even an in-universe book that they talk about, and I think it's called Space Beast, where there's a group of cultists where someone had smuggled information out about what happened on Ripley's prison planet. And now they worship the Space Beast. They worship the fucking xenomorph, because they're like, that's what's out there. That's why we shouldn't be out here. And that works because, again, unreliable narrator. You don't know. Another setting I thought, and this is going to sound really weird, but follow me here. You know how we talk about settings that are so lore rich and so detailed where they're almost intimidating to run? Mm-hmm. This one, I think, would work depending. Okay. And I love this game because I love the world. Dune, Adventures in the Imperium, which is another Modifius game. The Dune universe starts like 10,000 years after we've left Earth. And you don't need to be on Dune during the rise of Paul Atreides and establishing of him as the new emperor, right? You don't have to go through him killing House Harkonnen. There's the Jihad. You could be any time after the God Emperor comes to power. That setting is so wide. Yes, there's certain events that happen, like Dune, Children of Dune, whatever, right? You don't have to be. If you don't even want to be on Arrakis, you don't have to be, because there's so many different planets. There's so many different houses that it is. Hell, there was the Bene Gesserit series that was on HBO Max a couple of months ago. that happened like 10,000 years before Paul Atreides was even a thought in his like dad's mind. So that's another setting that, yes, events happen. Yes, they will lead to an eventual conclusion with the thinking machines, but you don't need to be so beholden to lore. You can't tell an interesting story. And I never thought about that, because Dune is one of those settings where if you piss off the wrong Herbert fan, you're gonna catch a fucking blade in the back. But
Oh, exactly.
it's
And
I never thought of it being that wide open.
It is a very lore heavy setting, but there's enough stuff going on that you don't even really need to, other than, maybe the politics between the houses and stuff like that. You don't even really need to touch on a lot of that lore.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
and because you could be off on a completely different planet, and maybe you're working for one of the houses to stop fucking House Harkonnen from achieving one of their goals. And really, at that point,
or maybe you found.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was about to say, yeah, you're right. Like there's so many politicky things you can do, and even in the world of Dune, assassinations are encouraged. Like if you can't settle this with money, you're allowed to send out an assassin as long as you let somebody know, which I think is, or something along that line. It's been a really long time since I've read the rules, but it's really interesting how they handle that. And I just thought of another game, Damien, that gives you the tool set, gives you the setting, but the lore is so open-ended, you literally don't have to worry about it. Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah.
Think about that. They just give you, okay, it's the 1920s, monsters, go. Maybe you have to worry about the shadow over in Salmith and the raid against the Deep Ones. Maybe the boat hit Cthulhu in 1924 or whatever fucking year it was. Other than that, outside of in-universe things like maybe at the Mountains of Madness or Masks of Nyarlathotep or whatever, that setting is so wide open. There's no canonical events tying you to anything outside of real world stuff. Because I know there's a game that Modiphius does that uses the Cthulhu stuff, because I think it's in the public domain, called Achung Cthulhu, which is Cthulhu during the Second World War.
Oh man,
all you need to know is that monsters are real. Yeah, it's sick,
that would
dude.
be
It's
so
really
fun.
Good.
Because as somebody who is left-leaning myself, the ability to go back in the ability to play a character that goes to bitch slap the funny mustachioed dictator as they're trying to summon one of the elder gods. That just sounds like it would be fun. Because in the Cthulhu mythos that he was trying to pull that shit. You just know 100%. He was.
Actually, you know what's funny? Bizarre side story. I actually got in trouble for Cthulhu and World War II when I was in high school. Back in the olden days of the internet, I found a Cthulhu website, and they made a wallpaper, and someone had connected they kind of did one of those It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia boards connecting the occult of the Third Reich to Cthulhu, and the Allies were like, okay, we have to go assault. I think the name was Von Juntz or something. And I just thought it was a cool image. So I set it as my workstation's wallpaper. And I get pulled into the principal's office. So like, Mike, what is this? Like, this is Nazi shit. I'm like, what are you talking about? We're fighting monsters. And then I'm like, oh God, I'm sorry. But yeah, I got in trouble for that. But you're right. Like when you look at something like that setting, you're just given, here's a very specific time frame. Here are monsters. Go kill some Nazis or bad people. And that's all there really is kind of to it. And I think games like that are really interesting because they're just giving you the tools. One game you and I have not brought up, and it breaks my heart we didn't mention it, because I think this game, people know about it, but I don't hear anybody playing it. GURPS. generic universal role-playing system. What a beautiful concept. Much like Rifts, completely modular, include whatever the hell you want in it. You want to bring, like, what the first book I ever bought for that game, Damien, was Cthulhu Punk.
Oh, nice.
Cyberpunk and Cthulhu. How awesome is that? And you want to bring in magic? Cool. You want high tech? Awesome. You want to bring in medieval weaponry? I don't know why you would, but you can do that. You want to bring in psionics? You can do that too. It's so modular. You can just do whatever. And there's no GURPS world setting that I'm aware of. Anyway, I know for like GURPS Cyberpunk, they kind of do. And for GURPS Cthulhu Punk, there's world information. You don't have to use it, but you could. Yeah, like that's generic systems like that. I think are very interesting. I know there's another game. Have you ever played Masks or anything powered by the that Masks is an amazing system.
Oh yeah, I did actually a guest spot on another podcast for Masks. Where you go? And yeah, so the Dice Fiends this past March did. I think it's a yearly thing they do. They call it like March Maskedness, where they have like
awesome.
Yeah, basically it's like one game of Masks that they put out per week, and I was in a couple of them. It's a great system. Another one that along the same vein, Monster of the Week.
Yes, another great game.
Like if you want to play Supernatural, the TTRPG, I'm pretty sure there is a Supernatural TTRPG. But like if you want to play it without without the trappings and without the expectations,
CW-ness of it all.
Yeah, the CW-ness and the expectations. Yes. That is the system. Like I think in the campaign that we did, because we did this for the Daniel's Dread Tales podcast, it was essentially the centered around Redacted USA, which was canonically 2 hours away from everywhere. Doesn't matter where we were going; it took us 2 hours to get there.
I love that.
Oh yeah, it was awesome. Because like the reason and little tangent time. One of the main reasons why it was redacted is we couldn't think of a name for the city that we had our base in. So we're just like, yeah, we're just gonna call it Redacted. It's easier that way, and that way it can be anywhere. But yeah, like that's one of those systems that's again, it gives you the framework. Yeah, you could base it in any time frame from back in the Middle Ages all the way into like a futuristic type time frame if you wanted to put in a little extra legwork. And it wouldn't even really be all that much. Another one that I really like, that there is a baseline of a world that is already created. And I don't know if you have much experience with this, but Blades in the Dark.
I've heard of it, and I've heard people using it to run Assassin's Creed hacks and stuff like that, but I myself have never played it.
Honestly, it's one that I would suggest if you can find a GM that is willing to run it, that you sit down and play even like a one shot. It's very what you can do is essentially up to the permissibility of your GM. Like,
oh, that's fun. That's cool.
As an example here, like, my character that I played in, like, because the group that I used to be a part of that ran it, I think we were going for something like 2 years of weekly play, basically. Like at the end, it ended up petering out to every other week because adult life happens.
Yeah.
But like my character went from being a whisper, which is that setting's like magic user. I was
Mm-hmm.
a magic man's. Then I became a vampire magic man's. And then like it ended up being uh like we ended up passing the torch for GM, but like my character, like my primary character that I played with that ended up essentially ending the world by getting their wish. So like with in Duskfall, basically Blades in the Dark happens after the apocalypse. The apocalypse happened, shit's fucked up. There's no sun, it's perpetually dark, no stars in the sky. This, that, and the other thing. And my character's goal, like his end goal, was he wanted to bring the stars back because of his obsession with one of the demons that's in the setting. And we as a group decided that like their domain, as it were, would be space and the stars. So like I as a player was able to kind of craft this like little mini lore around this demon, and like it was the demon Satara, and you know my character referred to her as the mistress of the stars and this, that, and the other thing, and it was great. um the like my character also ended up becoming one with the ghost field by controlling Ouroboros. And yeah, it got to the point where it got just off the rails. And it's I fuck, I did the same thing when we were playing Monster of the Week on the podcast. I swear I aged the GM at least a couple of years. Every time I was like, I'd like to solve this problem with magic. And
A
then
wizard did it.
and then summon Jormungandr to take a bite out of Leviathan, because that's what you do.
As one does,
Yeah.
yes.
And getting kind of and like actually I'm going to use this as a jumping off point to kind of mention one of the things that I want to, like, one of the things, getting back to the whole world building thing.
Mm-hmm.
As a player in a setting, you shouldn't be afraid to help build the world. Even, and I'm going to say this, and there may be people out there who disagree, especially GMs that are very specific and precise about their world building and stuff like that. Don't be afraid to create your own quests as a player.
Yeah, like I love, like my GM that I play with, he encourages us to throw him plot hooks and curveballs. Like, for example, in our one game, I have a side quest where I gave him a really cool backstory, but I am a heartbroken moon druid who had a summer relationship with a nymph during the summer. Obviously, a good time. But when he left the forest one day, she just wasn't there. And he's like, that's cool. I can use that. And now that's starting that background hook potentially could affect a major plot point for another character. And he's like, I'm glad you did that. Like, yeah, like when you're, because we kind of chatted about this last time. Don't be afraid to give your GM something interesting. I mean, as a player, that's what you want. You want to be there to tell a story. If you want to just do awesome math, maybe there's an Excel spreadsheet for you. And there's nothing wrong with doing dungeon crawl and just, I'm going to do some Nova burst damage and fucking Tiamat's going to die in less than a round, and I'm still going to have my action surge left. That's a style of play I'm not going to yuck your yum party on. If that's you, that's great. But when you're a player, you can do so much more if your GM's willing to engage with you. And as a GM, give your players something to nibble on. Like having 3 or 4 different side quests during a thing is really interesting. For example, in a recent, this probably was 6-7 months ago in my private game, my DM had mentioned to us, oh yeah, this other mercenary company you meet on the road, they're all battered and beat up. They say, hey, if you go up the road a ways and turn left here on this map, there's a crypt. There's a bunch of undead in there. We got our asses kicked going through there. Maybe you guys will do better. And we're like, okay, cool. Thanks for the info. And we're talking our groups on the side of the road saying, guys, well, there is a crypt there. I mean, we are mercenaries. We are supposed to help people. This is sort of our nightly duties as so-and-so. But we're like, but we don't have a cleric. We can't do much against the we don't have anything that'll do damage there. So our DM's like, okay, cool. You go on your way. You go to Long Saddle. You have yourselves a meal. You refuel and keep going on the road. But we have some downtime, and our players are just doing some role playing. We're all chit chatting around the campfire, and we're like, well, guys, there's still that crypt back there. And our DM's like, yeah, and it'll still be there when you get back. So that's great. Like dropping side quests to make your world live and breathe. Don't be afraid to do that, because I think that's very interesting to give your players something more than just, you're not just railroading towards the big bad evil guy. Like, I think a good example of this is certain television shows, for example, have an overarching narrative, but you need to let your players breathe. There has to be your side episodes or bottle episodes, which take place almost entirely in one room sometimes, and giving your players the ability to explore other things in the world, find different things, and just breathe life into the world is really interesting. Because one thing our DM encourages, for example, we're part of a mercenary unit known as the Antaran Knights, based out of my fictional city of Cambridge. And my DM's like, okay, if you guys want to make up historical events, here's a channel in our Discord. Tell me what happens. What happened 150 years ago, 1,000 years ago? Did they fight a dragon? Was there some mystical item that's now held in a vault in Baldur's Gate? This information may never become relevant, but it might. And I love doing that. Like our one friend that I play with, I'm just going to call him Sam. He has a really cool background. And he's like, yeah, I have a thing against drow because something happened in my background. And our DM's like, okay, cool. And now that's come up as a major plot point. And that's something that never would have come up under probably any other DM, because it's a minor thing. But having these little tourist stops along the way, not quite tourist traps, but it gives you more as a player than you're not just rolling dice for damage. You're getting an interesting story. And that's one thing I've noticed, Damien, as I've gotten older. And I think you and I have both come along on this quest through different paths, but we've come to the same destination. We want stories. We want interesting stories. And when you build worlds that feel like they're lived in, they're breathed in, that's so much more rewarding. Like, you fight Tiamat, you fight Strahd, you win. It's so boring. And even with world building, there's no shame in losing. Sometimes there's some of the best stories come out of losing. Like, hell, the amount of times I've critically fucked up a roll, there's a story there.
Yep.
That can lead to your world building too.
Oh, exactly. Because yeah, the dice giveth, and the dice often taketh. And also, like, to jump in here, because I actually have an example of this as well. So this is a couple of years ago now. I was playing in a small campaign. There's like 2 of us in the GM. And my character was it was in 5th edition, and my character was an artificer. Their whole, like, I kind of did the whole, you know what, I'm gonna subvert the traditional D&D character background trope of, oh hey, tragic backstory. Nah, their backstory, Tinker, their backstory was they came from a loving family. Their family was super supportive. Their parents are still alive. They're out adventuring, because they want to. They want to go out on this adventure and experience stuff. And they want to find like new and interesting things to craft things out of. Like that was their whole raison d'etre. And throughout the campaign, unfortunately, the campaign didn't finish. But like throughout play, I as the player ended up giving, like, basically putting two like quests in front of them in this world. One, because they're an artificer and firearms existed in this world. They were in the process of making a modern style sniper rifle, like barrel rifling, scope, the whole kit and caboodle. Like they got to the point where they created a blueprint. They were starting to like craft the stock. Unfortunately, it never got made because the campaign ended before, which made me very sad. Another thing that I had decided, like partway through, we were in the middle of doing one quest, and we came across this village that was being essentially like the men were being worked to death. They were being exploited by this mining company in the world that the GM had created. And me being the person that I am, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try and get this town on my side. And I'm going to create a trade school in this town. And this is
interesting.
And yeah, like originally, like the first reason why I did it was to try and get them on my side. And then I'm thinking about it as the session's going on. I'm like, no, this is an idea. Because I'm associated with the like this crafters guild already, and you know, working my way up. And once I get to a certain level, then you know, I can create this and put something, as a player, put something into this world. And like it got to the point where all I needed was, I think the GM said, yeah, 20,000 gold, and you have the you'll have the capital to have this built. And that was awesome, because I then took because like my character had, you know, the boring buy-in of I just want to adventure. But through that, I, as the player, took my agency and decided, you know what? I want to make something in this world. I want to leave my mark on this world that's being created. And I think looking at it from a player perspective, that gives a lot of agency. A lot more than you would normally get in a 5th edition campaign, I feel. And looking at it from a GM perspective, that's doing work for me to help flesh out this world that I don't have to do. It's, you know, it's adding in a flavor that wouldn't be there otherwise. You know what I mean? Because then like
I think
the GM can take that world as it's established after the campaign is done, play another campaign in that world, and they're like, yeah, so this this trade school that's in, you know, this small town, or what's now a city, was created
still
by
exists.
Was created by Tinker, who is the they're the big muckety muck that you have to get a you know, you have to make an appointment to be able to interact with them, type deal. Or, you know,
actually, you bring up a very good point. Interesting, having a player character graduate to NPC makes that world feel a little bit it gives it history. And that's something so important about lore building. I think people tend to forget is, yes, you have your shopkeeper who goes, hello, me lord, can I sell you a potion? But if you as Damien have given, what's the Tinkerer will say, you give them a history, you know who they are. So there's there's lived experience there. It makes that world breathe. I think NPCs history, especially player created stuff, when you have that built into your worlds, that creates so much more depth. It creates a sense of familiarity, and not all people are going to pass into Heroes of Legend. You're not all going to be Sturm, Brightblade, or whatever, but that gives you something. And I love that idea of making a fucking trade. God damn, I'm stealing that.
Go ahead.
Cause we have an artificer in our group, my friend Nick. I'm like, yo, have I got an idea for you? Um, but yeah, it's like when you create interesting NPCs with an interesting history who were on the opposite side of that making history, now they're a part of the history of the world. That's some really, really cool shit. And you're not relying on established characters. You're not relying on your Gandalfs, your Sturm Brightblades, your Thor Oakenshields, or whatever. That's some cool shit.
Exactly.
I enjoy that. I don't always need to run into Optimus Prime to have something cool happen.
Or even like another thing too, even if like, and again, talking about like reusing worlds that you've used before, maybe you don't even necessarily have to have one of those old PCs turn into an NPC. And this here is one of the reasons why I like crafting in game systems. And one of my biggest gripes about 5th edition and probably 2024, because I don't think they fixed it, is crafting.
No, it all comes down to gold. It's bad.
Like, so say you have a character in one of your campaigns, they craft, you know what, fuck it, I'll use the sniper rifle example. You know, guns exist in your fantasy world. You know, one of your old characters created this one-of-a-kind sniper rifle. You set your next campaign, say, 100 years after that. The name of that character is probably forgotten, but your party, your players come across this old rifle. Like, you can tell it's a gun, you can tell it's a rifle, but it's completely different from anything else you've ever seen. You know, maybe they made it out of magical metal, so it's still in pristine condition, but otherwise it's just a normal, quote-unquote, normal rifle. But, you know, you can then take that to an appraiser, and they're like, oh, hey, this is one of the pieces that was made by Tinker. They're, you know, this fabled this fabled artificer from many years ago. You know, it's one of the few surviving relics from that time. And then, you know, you're
so it's sort of like doing like a backdoor bardic knowledge, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like stuff like that, little things like that as a GM you can lift from your players, or as a player that you can, you know, kind of just serve to your GM. Those are the things that make your world feel lived in. Because, like, the Forgotten Realm...
Now, here's a question.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
No, go on. I was about to say, so I had a thought, but I want you to finish yours because I think it's going to be an interesting, complete divergence from this, because I don't think you're going to see this one coming.
Okay. But yeah, like basically where I was gonna go with that is like your Forgotten Realms, your Kryn, your Greyhawk adventures. Those didn't start out fully fleshed out. Those didn't start out with the artifacts that you can see in the books that are printed today. Those started out, honestly, as tabletop adventures where, you know, Drizzt, if I remember correctly, was actually somebody's character before he was written into a novel. Elminster was somebody's character before he was written into canon. You know, so like having that iterative building onto that world is there's something powerful in that.
Now, here's a question for you. What do you do when it's time to destroy it? And here's what I mean. So I've been running my friendly local game store game for probably about a year now, maybe a year and a half. And I've introduced some pretty fucking wacky elements into my game. I've got fucking xenomorphs are running around. The idea of Shang Tsung from Mortal Kombat has now been hinted at. I may have written myself into a creative corner. And my players are pretty strong. And I like the idea that my world has evolved. There's a tie to Ravenloft. There's a tie to Mind Flayers and the Illithids and all that cool shit. What do you do when it's time to say, okay, this world has now got to end? And there's a very famous module for AD&D 2nd edition called the Apocalypse Stone. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
I am not.
Okay, so long story short, there is this object where if you remove it from this location, it will end the universe. The planes start to drift apart. You can't escape via Spelljammer. Bad shit happens. I heard about this story on like a podcast years ago, and I actually went and bought the book. Chris Pramis wrote it, the guy who's in charge of Green Ronin, oddly enough. And like, it's literally designed as a campaign ender. And this is the sort of thing you would do to your players if you've given them entirely too much magic swag, you've given them too much. This is the hitman in a trench coat you send to take out your entire planet. And it's an epic thing because if eventually you fight like the Tarrasque or some bullshit, which is kind of cool. You fight like one of the big princes of hell or something, like Mephistopheles or Asmodeus or I don't know, some bullshit guy who's really fucking powerful. And I'm considering running it because I love my world that I've created in the Forgotten Realms, but I kind of wonder, have I introduced too much wacky shit, or should I just accept the fact you can get yourself out of this? Because it's D&D, there's time travel, there's dimension hopping. Because we've already talked about Doctor Who in this, so we know there's timey-wimey bullshit.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm kind of wondering, is it time to either hit the reset button, or should I give them an epic conclusion before the end of the year and just start in a whole new thing? Because again, we've talked about Dragonlance, we've talked about Greyhawk. I've never run in those settings before. And that might be a new interesting thing, because my group that I play with, I have 3 people who always sign up to play with me, which is awesome. But I want to keep them on their toes, and creatively I want to do something interesting too. But the Forgotten Realms is something I wouldn't say I know well. I know well enough to know the background. I know enough to get the 7-Eleven, if you kind of get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I couldn't tell you how to get the Bobby's house, so to speak. So what are your thoughts on how do you end a world? Or how do you end a campaign that is A, gotten out of control, or B, you are creatively done with?
So I have a couple of ways that I have approached this in the past. So the most abrupt way I've done this, and thinking back on it now as a more experienced GM, it wasn't really satisfying for the players, so I probably wouldn't do this method again. But
okay,
as I mentioned last time, stuff is always going on in the background. Mm-hmm. Like, your adventuring party is probably not the only adventuring party in the world. Mm-hmm. And the bad guys that you're facing aren't the only bad guys out there. So one way, and like I said, this one, depending on how you flavor it, might not be the most palatable for players, but it is a hard stop reset, is the giant meteor storm that has come out of nowhere.
Okay.
So essentially, somebody had pissed off the wrong mage or the wrong god, and the deities in charge, or that specific deity has decided, you know what? No, screw everyone
You
in
monkeys.
that general region of reality type deal. So that's one way to do it. Rocks fall, everyone dies. Um, Another way to do it, and probably how I would do it now, would be like, you'd mentioned like essentially play out the year. You have let's say you're doing weekly sessions, so you have at
Mhm.
least 12 sessions before the end of the year.
Yeah.
Okay, start from now and start a lead up of, okay, so the gods, the deities of the realms are becoming more active, and the great game that they're playing, because in a polytheistic pantheon, guaranteed, all of the deities are scheming against each other. Doesn't matter if they're good, evil, neutral, what have you. They're all scheming. Their game is coming to a head, and your players start, find out about a prophecy that of a big upheaval that's coming, and the signs start to become more apparent, every session or two, and then end it with, maybe your players get the choice of, they can side with one of, say, three deities type deal. And they can decide whether life is, scoured from the realms, if maybe it becomes a wild magic era
Ooh,
going
interesting.
forward, or maybe, the deity they side with does hit the like the soft reset, and everything that happened over, say, the last 5 years of campaign time, like in-world campaign time, is reset. And you do and you give the players the choice of how they want to change things, and how they want to end things type deal. You know what I mean? Because then
Yeah.
that gives you, as the GM, you can keep that kind of in your back pocket and say, you know what, I want to I want to revisit this with these events that have happened a couple years down the road. And then,
Okay.
you want something new, so it's like, oh hey, I left in a previous campaign, I left the Forgotten Realms as, they're in a wild magic era. Let's do a one shot where you're playing in this era, and all magic is wild magic, and then wild magic sorcerers are just extra wild magic type deal.
That could be really fun, actually.
Yeah, and it gives you something that you can use as like a back pocket. I'm feeling bored with this for now, and I want something a little different. Or, you know what? It gives you that clean slate of, okay, so this is just done and dusted. We can then move on to playing some Dragonlance, and then we don't even have to look back at this.
Yeah, because like I'm thinking like one thing that you and we never experienced it personally, at least that I'm aware of. But when you and I were living in very close proximity, one of the things that happened in World of Darkness, for example, how they ended their campaign world before we got the new World of Darkness, and now we're in the new World of Darkness version 5 or whatever. There was the Time of Judgment, which I always thought was tremendously interesting, but nobody played. And it was such a definitive end to the world. But like you said, they gave you choice. They're like, what if the vampire Guyana happens? What if the hunters win? What if the werewolves and the worm happened, right? Like, what if the black spiral dancers won? And I always thought that was really interesting. It gave you options. But I like your idea. We're like, if you want to revisit this, here's a one shot. Here's one possible outcome to how this happens. And I'm kind of wondering, I've been thinking in my instance right now, what if I hit the cosmic reset button, but they still get a chance to fight the thing? Because I've always had the big bad of my campaign being Strahd. But the thing is, he's trapped in Ravenloft for 250 years. He can't send forces over to our realm, but he can ask other people to do bullshit. So, but that's getting inside baseball. That's a conversation you and I should have off mic, just in case my players are listening. Fuck off now.
That is entirely fair. Another way you could approach it too is the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy method, where the
History
world
eraser button.
where the world blows up, but lo and behold, there's another level above what we know where it can just be rebuilt in a giant planet factory.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's something like, it's interesting. Like, the world of role playing, it's so interesting because literally there's no shackles on us. It's not like Ed Greenwood's going to come up from Toronto and beat the ever living crap out of me. I don't expect the writers from White Wolf to come up and kick my ass anytime soon, though maybe. It's fascinating. We live in such a fun era for role play, and just seeing so many different people come into the hobby for the first time, seeing new people or seeing old people be revitalized. Because when I was hanging out with you, I was in kind of a lull. The only game I was playing was Vampire, but I had only played a couple sessions of D&D. I was more a Star Wars and Shadowrun player. And now it's hard to find people who don't engage in this hobby in some form. There are people who love Critical Role, but they don't play, or people that play D&D but don't like Critical Role. And there's so many interesting storytellers that are coming out of it. So we're seeing so many cool people just realize different areas of potential. Like, there's one guy I like, I think his name is Brendan Lee. He's a fucking awesome DM, but he's freaking hysterical. And yet there's another group of content creators that you and I have talked about before, like the Dungeon Dudes. I've never listened to Dungeons of Drakkenheim, but I prefer listening to them talk about the mechanics and the worlds of how to make your games better. And I don't know. I think we live in such a cool time for this hobby that I don't know. I really wish if I could go back in time, I wish you and I had taken it upon ourselves to do some tabletop on our side rather than relying on who we did at the time for our exposure to doing something fun. Yeah. I wonder what we would have played way back. I think we would have been D&D people. I think maybe Shadowrun, one of the two. I think
so. During that time, like a little bit, more of the Damien lore. By that point, I'd played a couple of systems. Like, I cut my teeth, like my ttrpg teeth, so to speak, with Palladium RPG. That was my first ever experience with tabletop role.
Wow.
Yes. Then after that, it was a few years. About 5-6 years went by because I was like 12. No, it wasn't even 5-6 years in that case. It was more like 3 or 4 years went by. And then I'd gotten into D&D 2nd edition. Unfortunately, I had some very a very Gygaxian GM at the time who, it was a very brutal game. I remember my first session, I ended up making like 3 characters because like I would play to
Meat Grinder.
Well, I would play to what the lore for the specific, like my first character was a dwarven thief, and
Mhm.
he died to a mimic because like in second edition,
Oh,
the way that they described
that
dwarves was you're obsessed with like gems and gold and stuff like that, and I was also playing a thief, and there was a treasure
made sense.
chest. So I'm like, oh hey, treasure chest, this is my time to shine. And all of a sudden I'm being eaten by a mimic and I have to write up a new character. Um but I mean like in some cases like that at the time I had fun. I know if I was to go into it now with the experience that I have, it would be a little bit more of a feels bad moment. Because I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, there was a way you could have, as a GM, warned me about this as me being a new player, but that's
Mhm.
that's a different conversation about GMing styles and skills. Um,
You know what? That's maybe a conversation, I think, for this like podcast when we get a chance to do it again. Like, I cut my teeth on AD&D second edition, and it honestly ruined D&D for me for probably almost 10 years. I played with a guy who was very much into AD&D. He was into Dragonlance. He was into Spellfire cards. And my first character, I think, was a human cleric. And I was taken off guard because like you can't use edged weapons. I'm like, what? Because at the time I was really into Castlevania. Like I just played Castlevania 3 on the NES. To set a time period, I'm old as shit, fuck off. But I was like, this seems lame. And my DM had never developed a story. I will tell you the exact story. Go to an orc base. Why? Because they're orcs. Okay, I'm just gonna murder these people? Is there a reason why? My DM was not a good storyteller, and it turned me off of D&D for like 10 years. And it wasn't until third and fourth edition that I really started to get back. I was surprised because when I was running my podcast in my early years, I'd moved and Wizards of the Coast had sent me all the books for fourth edition because they were really trying to push it at the time. And I thought it was really cool. I didn't understand a lot of the mechanics. It really wasn't until fifth edition came around and when I started reviewing the books and getting a regular group on the regular that I really started to enjoy D&D again. And I would argue Baldur's Gate's what brought me into the love of this world now. But I look at the systems I've played. I've played some Rifts, wasn't very good. I played one session of Cyberpunk 2020. I think we got through character creation. I played a lot of Vampire. Shadowrun second edition, somewhat third. What else did I play? I made characters for Werewolf and Hunter, never got them off the ground, unfortunately, which really sucks. Tried GURPS. I played a lot on my other podcast. We actually used GURPS for a few things and it turned out okay. But I don't know. It's maybe that's almost a conversation there, Damien. I'm just kind of spitballing here. What's a good introductory system for people these days? Because now we've got D&D 2024 as the new de facto iteration of the D&D world, but we also have other games, as you mentioned, that are more narrative based, like Blades in the Dark or Masks, stuff that isn't so math heavy. There's even shit. I'm trying to remember the name of the system. It uses fudge dice. Help me out. I can see the book cover, but I can't name it. Oh, and it's so narrative based. Literally, it's only 2 dice. It's gonna drive me crazy. I own the book, but I can't see it. It's in my back room. Shit. But yeah, like I know certain games. Like I know when you and I were talking about BattleTech, for example, I was terrified you were going to use a time of war. But you're like, no, we're going to play MechWarrior Decimate. Oh, cool. I understand that. Kind of. If you go back and watch the live streams, watch Mike struggle for 20 minutes to roll a set of dice. But yeah, that's maybe interesting, like where people can start, because not all systems are created equal. Not all settings are created equal. Our opinions are obviously very subjective
oh,
because One thing I found, and this may be just my own personal experience, is having people trying to get new people into the hobby and trying to introduce them to a new setting. Like, you say D&D, you know, swords and sorcery. That's an instant whatever. You say Star Wars, lightsabers and blasters. You say BattleTech. Some people will know, not many, but other people are going to look at you cross-eyed and go, what? You mention other systems, they just don't know. There's so many systems out there now on so many different settings. I fear if you show people the wrong game, they're going to lose interest because the systems may be too hard, too math heavy, or not crunchy enough.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like, honestly, in my opinion, and this might be the wrong opinion, but I'm gonna state it anyway. I personally think a lot of people who jump into D&D as it is now should, and you may disagree with me on this, should actually look at, like should go back and find the books for 3.5. 3 and 3.5. They are far crunchier. Yes, I know. One of the things that I love about them. But the way that they describe and the way they put forward things like your skills, what you can do with them, how you can, like, you know, you can, it may not be the most optimal way to play, but you can, in 3.5 and Pathfinder First Edition, build a character that is centered around crafting. You can build an alchemist. You can build, you know, your blacksmith that, for whatever reason, decided to take up a sword and start adventuring. It is, you know, it is very math heavy. And there are a lot of people who would be turned off by that. But I think it would provide a little bit more perspective, in a way, on what can be done within that sort of setting. Also, D20 Modern. More people.
There is a new version of it. There is a version of D20 Modern called Everyday Heroes. I think it's done by Evil Genius Games. Really cool game. And it's basically the new version of D20 Modern, very similar to 5e. I like your idea of going back to 3.5/Pathfinder. I would say to start, so people find out whether this is the right thing for them, start with 2014 D&D. Specifically because of the digital tools that D&D Beyond offers you, because it shows you how the math works, and if it doesn't work, you can't do it. Then when you feel comfortable, and if you don't always have access to a computer or a smartphone or a tablet, and you use how I think the term's grognards or whatever, we used to play on pen and paper. I know, weird. Then doing something like Pathfinder or older versions of D&D might be very, very interesting, because I know those games are still well supported in online spaces like the DM's Guild and other online resources, obviously Reddit and places like that, or Pinterest. There's tons of places for stuff like this. And I think that's a very cool idea, because I myself love fucking Pathfinder. I think it's a fucking awesome world. The system's great, and I get it. But thinking on my skills now, I think I over rely on digital tools. So I think teaching someone with like, here's how your roles function, and as long as you have a patient GM to teach you things, I think you could transition from 2014/2024 into an older system and still have fun.
Oh, exactly. And like, that's actually kind of one of the reasons why I say that some people, not everybody, obviously, like, there are people who just want, you know, a very narrative system, and there are plenty of systems out there. But for people who want a little bit more crunch, or the min-maxers and stuff like that, because there are min-maxers in almost every group.
Oh God, yeah.
Going back to something like 3.5 where, and it's kind of specifically because there is no D&D Beyond for 3.5. You actually have to
There used to be a system, kind of.
Yeah. Like,
but I don't think it's supported. I think not Hero Forge. There was a digital tool, but I don't think it works anymore.
Yeah. But
yeah, anyway, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. But like, that's going to kind of pound that I should know what the stuff on my sheet does, because it kind of forces you into that mindset. Like,
which is good.
Like I didn't have a printed off, like my first printed off character sheet was for 5th edition. 3 and 3.5.
Oh, wow.
Every one of my character sheets was either handwritten on graph paper or handwritten on line paper. Like it got to the point where it got to the point where I could create a character sheet in less than 5 minutes if I was just handed graph paper to do so, and it would have enough space for everything.
I was actually going to ask you, are there any systems where you could literally do character creation off the top of your head?
I'd like to say 3.5, but I would need some of the books just simply for
reference.
Mainly for the skills, so that I had the correct tagged ability. But like, as far as like doing the dice rolls, modifiers, stuff like that, I could build probably most 1 to 4 level characters without really needing to reference the books. But I also like read so much of that when I was like living with like Ollie and Nick. That was the majority of my reading material, were the 3rd ed books.
I think if I went back in time, outside of needing one book for some of the math, just to know like how much does this cost and skills, I could do Shadowrun 2nd edition with all the attributes, all the skills. Some of the weapons I could probably, because I know the Ares Predator does 9M damage. I think the Remington Street Sweeper does 10S damage. And ballistics armor, I think a secure tech coat was 4-3. That's how much of a dork I was. I could do Shadowrun and Star Wars 2nd edition, and like as long as I wasn't a Jedi, I could put together a character pretty quickly because I know all the attributes, all the dice assignments. It's so funny how far we've come and how many companies support digital tools now, which make things easier, but I also think having that access to tools makes things so much easier and makes the games easier to learn. But knowing what everything does on your sheet definitely helps. Like I know having a digital tool like D&D Beyond is really useful, but there's another character creator for Star Trek Adventures, which is supported by the community, and there's a website called Continuing Missions, and there's a character creator on there, and there is a thing that allows you to print out your sheet in PDF, but there's also options where if you don't want to have your sheet cluttered with what does a phaser do, what does this talent do, or whatever, it doesn't have to. But if you want to have that option there, you do. And I think most people should, if you're going to make a sheet or a character, you should know what your character does. Like I can think of one example. I was GMing at my friendly local game store, and there was a guy, he played a ranger. Okay, cool. And he played a horizon walker. And I was like, okay, that's a weird subclass to take, but sure. And he never got a chance to use any of his subclass abilities because he didn't know what they did. And that's not a good way to play. And what I mean by that is I'm not calling that guy an asshole. I'm saying you as the player are robbing yourself of that experience, not knowing what you're doing. And me as the GM, I'm now caught off guard if you randomly decide to pull out one of your abilities and I don't know what it does. That's not great either. So yeah, that's interesting because like you bring up a very good point, like knowing what everything on your sheet does. Like I had a player recently in a game that I play, and this guy's pretty advanced, but he wasn't familiar with how sorcery points work. And his turn would take long because typically in D&D in our game, each player's turn generally lasts less than 2 minutes. His turns were taking like 3 to 5. Again, not a terribly long time, but combat would drag out a little longer than it could when we're trying to figure out meta magic options, this, that, and the other thing. It was just, you really kind of need to know what you're doing. And again, I think that's the importance of, you bring up a very good point. By learning older systems, you get into that habit of just learning things. I'm not saying you have to be an expert in knowing everything. Like, I don't expect you to be a mechanic or a lore master for certain things, but you should know, what does the perception skill does? What does action surge or second wind does? You should have a general idea of that. Now, it's okay to learn new things. Like, for example, I'm going to blow your mind here. I've never played a fighter before. And I just made a fighter Gloomstalker Ranger. I know that's a min-max character because I can do amazing burst damage, but it sounds fun. But I've never played a fighter. I've never played a fighter battle master, and I've never played a Gloomstalker Ranger. I played a Ranger, but not this specific subclass. So I guess our advice here is play what you want, but do the homework.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't do your homework at the table, because you don't want to ruin anybody's time. And again, we're all here to have fun. We all want to have our adventure, slaying the monster, fighting the robot, saving the townspeople from Godzilla or whatever.
Yeah.
But don't monopolize everybody's time because you didn't take the time to learn what you do. But we don't want to discourage you from having fun. Just be cognizant of when you're doing this.
Oh.
Like, don't pull out the rule book at the table and say, well, what does this spell do? Holy shit.
Or if you are going to do that, do it in a way that's not like disruptive of the table. Because like I've played in physical games where, like, you know, maybe my turn is coming up or I just had my turn and I'm like, oh, hey, I want to use this spell. I need to double check to see what exactly it does. Finger of Death. So I play a lot of sorcerers and magic users because that's just my shtick. I have 2 sorcerer stories here. And it relates to what we're saying, is like knowing what your spells can do and things like that. So I was playing it was a physical campaign. It was a higher level campaign. Like, we started at level 15 or 16. It was fairly short, but like, one of the spells that I took is Finger of Death. Basically, you do a bunch of damage, and if you kill a medium-sized or smaller humanoid with this spell, it turns into a skeleton under your control.
Oh.
Yes. Now, how this can be really fun is if you are a sorcerer with this spell and decide to use the meta magic twin spell. You aim that at 2 different humanoids. Instead of having 1 skeleton minion to follow you around per casting, you now have 2 skeletal minions following you around per casting with no upper limit. At least, I don't know if they changed that for 2024. But what
I was about to say, now, do you think that's a rules oversight, or you think that's just a clever way to use that spell?
Both.
Is this a simulacrum problem? You know what I'm saying?
I think it's kind of both. Because like there should be, like, honestly, there should be an upper limit. Like, there should be a hard, like, outside of the spell, you can only control this many minions rule within D&D's system to prevent stuff like that.
Maybe tie it to your proficiency modifier or something?
That would actually be the perfect way to do it. Is have it tied to your proficiency. And also, it is a creative use of the spell because, you know, it's taking a look at the wording of the spell, and because it's a single target spell, being able to look at it and go and know, and like I said, it gets back to knowing what your stuff can do. You can then look at it and go, hey, I can use this to shape the world around me in ways that maybe the developer of the game or even the GM isn't expecting. But it's not so much of a curveball that you're like just pulling something out of left air and saying, yeah, I want my character to be able to fly at 500 feet per round type deal because of this, and this ability. It's not like a peasant railgun.
Yeah, like I know there's one combo you can do. There's a channel that I love. I love this guy, D&D Shorts, and he had a combo where if you use the catapult spell, a net, and alchemist fire, you could technically create, again, the peasant railgun that shoots acid. Because if you look at the thing, but there's also, I think the guy, I think his name's Bob the World Builder or something like that. And he had a really good piece of advice. And I always think of this too. D&D is not a physics simulator. So just because it works in real life, try not to apply it to D&D. And I think with your thing, because you're like, I don't know whether the developer intended this, you can always ask your DM like, hey, if you think this sucks, can we work this out? And again, we just came up with a solution without screaming at each other. It's like, can we tie this to proficiency bonus? Because then again, it's never going to be higher than a +5 and it's never going to be lower than a +1 or 2.
Yeah.
So that's not terrible.
And, it's not going to lead to me being a sorcerer with a bag of holding just full of skeletons. Because nobody wants me to have
you're
a
not
bag
gonna
of holding
take
full of skeletons.
Yeah, like I remember one thing that happened at my table, and it oddly enough involves a bag of holding. I didn't know this. I found out if you put one bag of holding into another bag of holding, it creates essentially a magical nuke.
Yep.
And I let my players do it once. I'm thinking, okay, that's clever. That's a cool way to solve the fight, but you're not doing it again. And that's almost a thing too. Like, how do you decide what gets banned at a table? Because I'm in your Discord server right now as we record this podcast, and it's never yuck anybody's yum. And you never want to discourage people having fun at your table, but you've talked about the peasant railgun. I have combos where I could, in theory, kill a Tarrasque at level 2. Rules as written. And that's fun to do once. And it makes me think of something that happened a couple weeks ago. So a few weeks ago, I was working with a group of kids. I know, big mistake. Mike is, he's weird. But I was working with kids and we're talking about D&D because these kids were awesome. And I was showing them some of these cool combos. And I remember one kid asked me, and this struck me because this kid could have been older than like 10. He's like, why would you do that to your DM? I'm thinking, and I answered off the cuff because I wasn't thinking. I was like, because it's fun. He's like, but then that's taking away the spirit of the game. And I'm thinking, kid, you've just channeled Jeremy Crawford. Thank you for being reasonable. And that's something too, because you never want to ruin the experience. And I like how you were willing to pull back on the infinite skeleton combo because everybody thinks about the simulacrum problem. And to bring this to a high level summary, the simulacrum problem is you just keep cloning yourself. You technically have an infinite use of wish if you are a high level enough wizard.
Yep.
And that is clever once. And it's something you never want to bring to the table. Or if you do, like one combo I use, I try not to abuse it, but it's too good. As a monk, there are certain things you can take. I think there's a feat called Crusher. And part of that, if you play an open hand monk, is you can move someone 5 feet, rules as written, in any direction. With the Crusher feat, you can do something a little bit extra with it too. So I said, says any direction, right? My GM's like, yeah, fine. I move him that many feet up. He's like, what? It's a direction. I play a lot of Street Fighter. I just pulled off a Sharuken.
Yeah.
Now he's knocked down. Now he's suffering fall damage and he's prone. And he doesn't get a saving throw. And my DM's like, fuck. And that's something like table disruption. That's a real thing.
Oh, I have one in kind of a similar vein. Again, me playing a sorcerer, playing a variant tiefling, and I took wings because the GM let me fly.
Mm-hmm.
And this was in a Spelljammer campaign that they were getting ready to start, and I think I was probably one of the reasons why it didn't go too far. Partially, probably because of this combo. Um, so the spell invisibility in 5th edition. You can't attack or basically you can't attack or cast spells on an opponent without it breaking invisibility. It's basically the way it
Mm-hmm.
works. And it says in there that it also says, at least in the 2014 version, possibly I haven't read 2024, so they could have changed this. But dropping something does not break invisibility. You can just let something go and it's not going to break
You
invisibility.
were dropping bombs, weren't you?
I was going
Mm-hmm.
invisible, flying up.
Mm-hmm.
I think I usually would do 20 feet, and dropping flasks of oil and also flasks of alchemist fire. With the some of the stuff that I had read, because before I even brought this up with the GM and kind of got their okay for it, um, potion vials and flasks and stuff like that do
Mm-hmm.
take fall damage. And at, I think it's 20 feet, the fall damage from dropping a flask of oil or alchemist fire would take would be enough to break the flask that it's in, without even really needing to roll for it. So
Mm-hmm.
what I would do is fly up invisible and essentially be just invisible war crimes and dropping both oil and alchemist fire on people. It's fucking great as far as a combination, because rules as written, it just works.
Yeah, it's kind of nutty some of the things you can do, and it's okay to have clever combos. Like we have one thing in our game with my friend Nick and Sam. We call it the Wombo combo. And the Wombo combo starts with my friend Sam casting Darkness. I throw down Spike Growth. You can guess how this ends. And it's worked out tremendously well. And now we've what we call the Garden Center of Death. The Garden Center of Death starts with the Wombo combo and then includes me throwing down Plant Growth. Plant Growth means 100 feet are now covered in plant. You have to expend 4 feet of movement for every 1 foot you want to move. That includes through my spikes. Enjoy. And if you're in darkness, you can't see.
Yeah.
And even if I think you're an asshole, we can just push you around with different types of abilities like Thorn Whip or whatever else. There's so many things you can do, or knock people prone or whatever. Yeah, it's fun. Just don't over abuse it, because your DM will find ways around it. I know ours did.
Ooh, okay.
But still.
So with that, and
Yeah.
you know the way 2014 works, and I'm assuming 2024 works.
Yep.
So if you have two players and an adversary.
Mm-hmm.
Adversary is grappling one of the players.
Yep.
The other player uses a spell that on, player number. So player number 1 is grappled. Player number 2 decides to use a spell on player number 1. Say even Thorn Whip, because I think that one doesn't do damage until you're within 10 feet of the caster, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong on that.
No, when you hit, it does deal 2d6, plus you can force movement of 10 feet. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was
up to 30 feet, I think, something like that.
There was another similar spell that was kind of the reverse of that. You force movement, and if they get within 10 feet of you, it does damage. Player uses that ability on another player to essentially remove them from the grapple. Who would you say gets the save? The player that the spell is being cast on, or the adversary that's holding on to that player?
If the player is willing to let the spell hit, they don't get a saving throw. But if the grappler is actively resisting that spell, so let's say they're fighting a giant octopus, or I'm just picking a monster.
Yeah.
So giant octopus would get a strength or dexterity saving throw, whichever is higher, to hold on to the creature they're grappling. I think that's a fair way to do it, because this way the player who's grappled, player A, is letting the spell happen. So they're gonna take that damage, and if the spell or the save from the monster fails, then yes, I would allow that player to be moved. I think that's a really clever way. I might actually use this. Yeah, that's actually really clever.
Oh yeah,
now
it's a great use of ability, but like at the same time, it's not like the monster is going to be like, oh, that you failed your save. I'm just going to let go now.
Well, shit. I guess I should just let him go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like you got to give the monster a chance. Now there is one broken combo, and it specifically comes from warlocks, and it's 3 invocations, and it mostly works. They work with your Eldritch Blast. There's Lance of Lethargy, Repelling Blast, and there's something else. Basically, one pushes you 10 feet, one slows your movement by 10 feet. So in theory, this person is never getting close to you. Yeah. Because the second that bolt hits, there is no saving throw. They're automatically pushed back 10 feet and their movement is slowed 10 feet. So I hope that gets patched in some way. Again, it's really clever. But again, I don't want to ruin anybody's time by saying, hey, you can't do that, because, it's in the toolkit. It's there for a reason. And not everything can be play tested 100% of the time and account for every possible situation. And like ultimately, we're all there to have fun. Don't abuse little loopholes like this in the rules. But everybody there has to be an agreed upon table etiquette.
Yeah.
I know I pissed off my friend Nick when I played a Warlock Paladin. Basically the Witch Knight combo people have probably heard about, and using my Warlock spell slots for smites. Again, rules is written.
Yeah.
I can do that. That's encouraged. But I can see how that could be really annoying. Or there's one thing, since you play a lot of sorcerers, there's the Sorcerer Lock, or the Coffee Lock, which is another... yeah, and that's a great combo, but ultimately you're going to be jittery as fuck. And, it's not a good time for role play. It becomes math. And if you want to play that dungeon crawl, min-maxy stuff, that's fine. But you have to make sure everybody at the table agrees to that, especially if you're ever doing PvP. And doing this to your DM, that's a really good way to make sure they're not having a good time. Because we're probably starting to wind down this episode. Yeah. When you look at people, when you as a GM, when you're not having fun, your players aren't having fun. And you should never have an adversarial view of your players. It's not you versus them. It's okay to have a little bit of payback, a little bit, but you never want to make it personal. Like I have had my friend Peter. He knows the rules like the back of his hand. He's a very smart fellow. And I had this awesome encounter with ghouls and ghasts and a bodak. He hits like the Terminator in one round. So much Nova damage. All right, cool. This encounter should have taken half an hour. You're done in 10 minutes. Okay. I guess this is what we're doing. And it screws up my narrative for the night. But I guess maybe that's on me for not designing a tougher encounter or something. But then again, I don't want to ruin their time because I want them to have fun. But beating up on each other, it's never a fun thing. There was an interesting conversation I heard today. And it was D&D treats hit points as the ultimate resource, right? Because having a lot of hit points is great. but you're just as effective at full hit points as you are at 1. But what if you starve the players of resources? What do I mean by that? So the example I heard from D&D Shorts was, what if you fought something like a Magitech engine? Long story short, it's something that requires spells to defeat. If you throw spells at it, it's reduced by the level of that spell. Normally it'll deal like 5d12 damage. That's nothing to laugh at.
No, not at all.
But if you throw a couple of level 3 spells at it, suddenly it's doing no damage because it's eaten the spells, but now you're starved of those spell slots.
Yeah.
So now the players don't have as many resources to play with. They still have their full hit points. And now when they fight big bad evil guy, now they really got to think about this. So that's kind of changes the dynamics of encounters, because that's something I never quite considered, is how to change encounters so they're not just pin cushions or slugfest that last over an hour. Because combat is fun, but when combat reaches over 30 minutes, I think you lose the plot and some players get really bored. But then again, if your players are nuking Tiamat in like 2 rounds, that's not fun either. It's cool once.
Oh yeah.
Victory should always feel earned.
And like with stuff like that, like I watched a video, like a short not too long ago. It kind of touches on this, and so this is going to kind of go back to what we spoke about last time about having at least a skeleton of a backstory for your characters, or for the PCs at the table. Is once they get up to that tier where you're just like, oh, I just lightly backhanded this Etten, and it's I've taken all of its hit points out in one shot, type deal. Give your players the time to shine. So like your warlock that has repelling blast, give them ledges to knock enemies off of. Give them mechanics. Say put a mechanic in your final boss where maybe they're fighting golems of some sort, and you have to get them back into alcoves, or something like that, where you have to make sure that these enemies are in a certain position or they will keep coming. Or threaten something that's not the PC's hit points. You come up to...
Because one thing I do for my encounters... Yeah.
Like, you come up to the big bad evil guy at the end, and they have, say, a family member of one of the PCs. They have the party mascot that disappeared 2 sessions ago in a cage over a pit of magma, and while the fight is going on, you have to try and rescue this character. Otherwise, they're going to die, type deal. And I know with D&D, especially in the current state of things, death is just
almost meaningless.
It really is. But like, that's PC death. Maybe in your world, the way you've built it up, you have to have a certain character level. The character's spirit or soul or whatever you want to call it has to be strong enough in order to survive being brought back.
Yeah, like I know certain, like I know I've heard of certain characters. Again, I know D&D Shorts on their Patreon. They just released a thing where they talk about resurrection complications. Death should never feel trivial in a game. Like I know for D&D, for example, you pay $2,000 or whatever it is. You go to the local temple, go to, hey, priest of Mistra, I need your help. Can you resurrect my buddy? Sure can. I don't like that. And nobody wants character death, but character death should mean something. But as you mentioned earlier, the dice giveth and they taketh away. I never want to feel rocks fall, everybody dies, but sometimes you fall down a hole.
Yeah.
Sometimes that happens. Yeah, it's a complicated way to get everything balanced in your games. And I think you and I are going to have a lot more interesting conversations about setting up your games, consequences. I honestly feel this is a really interesting series, Damien. I'm really liking what you've come up with in this little show that you randomly just messaged me about. This turned out to be a lot more fun, and I get to talk, hopefully not sound like an idiot, and just kind of chit chat about ttrpgs. I'm hoping your audiences are getting something out of this.
Honestly, I really hope that anybody watching this is getting something out of it as well. And if you are, there's a like and subscribe button down below.
Yes, please do. So I have to get going for the night. So I guess just pimp my shit, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So if you guys want to hear more of me, I am Mike the Birdman Ashkui. I can be found over at thisweekingeek.net, where I currently produce one of Canada's longest running podcasts, running continually since 2007. I do have a Patreon. I don't post over there too much often. It's free to basically it's support me if you feel like it. And I'm fine with it. I'm supposed to be writing some Star Trek Captain's Logs. I post shows that I do like this with Damien and like other people. As of this recording, I did just do an interview with the inventor Jeff from Galaxy Builder Decks. Sent me over a wonderful supply of those, which are wonderful if you run any sort of sci-fi games like Star Wars, The Expanse, or Star Trek. Pretty cool stuff. You can support him over at ttrpg, as well as his own publisher website with like his Journey Mountain Studios, I want to say. And as of this recording, I'm presuming this is going live on the weekend.
Yep.
Twig comes back for its fall season on Monday, and I have a bunch of cool Transformers I'll be reviewing. Hasbro sent over some cool stuff. Razer sent over some cool things just to look at for back to school. And finally, Shark Ninja sent over some new stuff. So if you're going to college, university, or just want something cool to have for one last camping trip this year, we're going to be talking about some really cool things as the show premieres on Monday.
Ooh.
Oh, and of course, all my socials are Birdman ODST or Birdman Guelph on Blue Sky. I don't use Twitter that much anymore. It's only just for random comments on stuff. It's not my primary social platform. That is Blue Sky, and sometimes you can find me on Instagram as well.
Alrighty. Well, thank you very much for coming and hanging out and chatting with me again, Mike. I will be definitely getting in touch with you as to when we can record our next conversation. I hope you have a great rest of your day and an enjoyable time at work on Friday. And I hope the rest of you are having a great weekend. And I can't wait to see you back. Cheers.
And as I'm often fond when I sign off on my podcast, be excellent to each other.